We're, we're going to go get this one inspected.
I think we'll go ahead and start. Jamie's going to get on Zoom.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we welcome everybody here for our work session. Just so you know, Commissioner Harvey is going to join us on Zoom. He's in transit, but he's gonna join us so that we can go ahead and get our meeting started. So we have Sylvia Stubbs here and myself, and hopefully Jamie here in just a minute. So to begin our work session, we'll hear from Ryan MacArthur and the fire people first. If you'd like to come up and speak into this mic and make sure you introduce yourself for the record.
Sure, I wasn't expecting to be the first one on the scene.
Hey, bet you put your name right on it. I know Ryan would want to speak.
So my name's Ryan MacArthur. I work with the state for forestry fire state lands. I'm the San Juan County Fire Warden. I'm down here that we help deal with all the unincorporated lands for any of the fire risks, fire reduction, stuff like that, wildland fires. I've kind of built a packet. It's got a whole bunch of information in. I won't get into it really deep. I'll let you guys review it. Go into it, and if you have any questions or concerns, feel free to reach out to me and I'll answer anything in more detail of whatever needs to be done. But it's like the first packet that's in here. It's a division of forestry fire state lands. I'll give you a brief description of what we are, some of the programs, some of the stuff that we have, that we do for the counties, how we're tied in with them, some of that kind of stuff. You can get onto ffsl.utah.gov. That's another one of our websites. They'll do a lot more information too, as you can start researching more after the questions. We can go there. In here I'll put a contact list for what's in it. It's got my contact information. I've got my fire management officer for the southeast area here, Rudy Sandoval, and then Adrian Washington is our new area manager for the southeast area. He took Jason Johnson's position. But anyways, all of the contact information for all three of us are in here. Got a bunch of the PC statements, stuff like that. PC is participation commitment, which is an agreement that's with us and the counties on, how to reduce fire risks and different things like that. It's got our agreements in here, stuff that we've been signed throughout over the years of how we work together, what the state does and how we can help and work with the counties. I put in here a manual for the fire department, so all of our fire departments, the VFDs, volunteer fire departments that are here in San Juan County, we work with them on getting them up to speed on trainings, qualifications, how to run billing, how to do all that kind of stuff for the cost of fires. Another thing that I put in here is just a code for the law, what's it called? The criminal codes for the law enforcement that they can look at depending on what people are doing out in the areas. That's things that they can be charged criminally if they're doing during fire season, burning, different things like that. With that packet information,
We'll make some copies of it.
we make copies, or like I said,
Yeah.
if you want emails, you can
That's fine.
come to me. Over the years, we've been communicating with Mac on a lot of this stuff coming in. I don't know if that's something that we want to change and maybe get one of the commissioners that's the fire commissioner. They would want me to speak directly with them and bring this stuff in or continue going through with Mac. I'm gonna say brief, from last year, San Juan County had 142 fire incidents, down here. One thing good about it is we only ended up burning about 24 acres in San Juan County last year, as opposed to, I think we burned 11,000 the year before.
Yeah.
So fire departments and the trainings that's been provided to them and how they're handling it, the quick response, it's been great. So we're just continuing training them on new and improved stuff coming out and how things are changing and getting them qualified, and running up to match up with what the agreements and stuff that we have. I was gonna say we stayed pretty low on human caused fires last year. We only had 10, and they actually consisted of half of our total acres. So it came up to 12 acres of human caused fires with only 10 fires. The rest of it were single tree lightning strikes. I was gonna say, but other than that, this year we're looking at getting set up with water agreements throughout the areas, bodies of water. We're setting up land use agreements with individuals and stuff throughout the county to help us support wildfires for this upcoming year, and going on that direction. If there's any questions, I'll be free to answer them, or any questions for either one of the people that are here with me.
I'm going to give you a question and a comment. And the comment might be longer than the question, so I'll start with that. Water's the big word in Utah this year. The legislature's passing a lot of bills dealing with water. We're worried on the Wasatch Front about the Great Salt Lake. In southern Utah, we're worried about Lake Powell. And so there's been a few proposals, and I'm addressing this because you're not only fire, you're forest, apparently.
So we're forest, so we're maintaining the lands, but we're mostly
Okay.
dealing with state and fed or state lands and private lands.
You're the right guy, no matter what.
Okay.
There was an article came out about a month and a half ago in the Salt Lake Tribune by Dee Theodore. She is a councilwoman from Salt Lake County Council, and she's also a biologist. In her article, she suggested that all the conservation measures that Salt Lake County was imposing and all the conservation measures concerning lawns and, take cold showers and all those kind of things were could not be as beneficial as active forest management. She felt like if the forest would actively manage and get rid of deadfall and allow aspen to grow, that there would be more water in the aquifer than all the conservation measures. I'm not going to debate that with you, but I thought her point was a good point and needed to be considered. We in San Juan County worry about our watersheds, and I'm sure you do too, because they seem to be kind of a tinderbox with all the deadfall and stuff like that. I've been told many times by the forest and so forth that in order to get rid of that deadfall, they'd have to bring in helicopters, and it'd be more expensive than all the drinking water that Blanding and Monticello could drink. No, I'm just being smart.
No, you're good.
But we appreciate what's been going on with the mastication of pinyon junipers south of Monticello and down towards Blanding stuff. We hope, and that's probably not your area, but if it is, we'd like to see more.
So there is areas of that does come with us, and that is so our WUI, our Wildland Urban Interface Coordinator, Duncan Franchetti. Wow. He is setting up programs like that and projects with different mastications, different units. It's like right now they're actually working on one in Bluff that's on the river, taking care of a lot of tamarisk.
Yeah.
We are getting more with him on finding more projects that are here. Plus, we are in cahoots, and we go and help out with the Forest Service, BLM, on some of these other lands that are actually here to help.
If a fire started in one of the watersheds, either here on the Blue Mountain in North Creek or in Johnson Creek over on the south side, do you have a plan of how you might address that, or will that just happen when the fire starts, or if it starts?
So this is this will be my fourth season here in San Juan County, as the warden. And there's a lot of them areas that we actually go in, and we're looking at to come up with plans and situations of just what you're saying, on some of these, these areas of, not only are how we going to handle it, but how are we going to protect people, the homes, the stuff with it, how many people do we need to bring in, getting into some of these remote areas that, maybe we don't have access to, roads to, how much do we have to fly, helicopters. So them things are in there. They are in the works. We're constantly looking at building them plans and the pre-planning of situations of major catastrophic wildfires.
Well, we rely on runoff and springs for our water source, and we have a couple of reservoirs on both sides of the mountain. But like Monticello, city of Monticello, I think they have 35 springs on the front face of the mountain.
Mm-hmm.
And I just hope that everybody's aware of the potential that North Creek drainage is kind of a tinderbox.
And it is, and it's, as you guys seen last year, we did a bunch of burning across the north face, or
Right.
the face up here with the Forest Service, going in there and cleaning some of that up. With their plans, they have came in contact with some of the state lands or private lands that are in there, to where we've been in cahoots with them, talking to them to help go through and pull some of that up and get rid of the ground fuels, the pine needles, the bedding on the thing to help stop a fire or give us some working ability, so that we don't torch and hope, completely wipe out some of these major watersheds. And I know this has been a major concern for a lot of people in San Juan County.
Well, I'm not telling this because I think you're doing a bad job. I'm telling you this because I think you do a good job, and I want to make sure that you understand the concerns of the citizens of San Juan County as far as our water is concerned, and a lot of it's spring water and a lot of it's runoff that, the pioneers went to extraordinary efforts to make sure there's water. The people in Blanding dug a tunnel up across the mountain from whatever, the Spring Creek or whatever that they take through the mountain over there. And like I said, we've got all these springs that we redid the spring boxes 15 years ago and increased that flow. But fire is it's a big deal. It's a big concern. So thanks for all you do. I don't know if Sylvie, do you have any comments or questions?
No, I just, I was in a presentation regarding this new idea, I guess, that he was talking about. And I thought about blending. One year we had lots of snow in the mountain and nothing made it to the reservoir. And it kind of support the idea that when we have overgrown, the trees drink all the water before it gets to, and all the whatever is in the way. So it basically, either cities or whatever, we need to kind of clear up the area so the water can flow without being sucked in. But we appreciate what you do, and thank you for your presentation.
Jamie, do you have any comments?
I don't right now, Commissioner. Thanks for fixing the audio, guys.
Okay. Well, thank you. We appreciate your presentation,
Thank you.
and we know you're going to get a lot of ground fuel this year with all the moisture, and that makes your job a little tougher. But You're up to it.
Yep, it'll be fun. It'll be a good year.
Okay.
Lots
Thanks.
of
Hey, Ryan.
wildflowers.
What was it? I don't know if you want to bring up the new Jason. Bring him up here. I didn't catch his name. Just to introduce him because we'll be on the staffing side of it. We'll definitely be in touch.
So this is our new area manager. He's the one that's taken Jason Johnson's place as the Southeast area manager, Adrian Washington. I'll let him kind of give him a
Awesome.
brief thing on it.
We're gonna put you on the hot
I'll
spot.
continue his legacy. I come from Colorado. I was the emergency manager in Colorado for the last 3 years.
Okay.
Doing COVID work. But I have a degree from Humboldt State, an old dirt forestry school. I like to get our hands dirty. Mastication, something that I'm really familiar with. I've been in the forest industry for, I don't want to give my age away, but I've been doing this for about 50 years now.
Oh, wow.
So I've been around, and I share your concern. What you're really talking about is the hydrological cycle.
Mm-hmm.
And, if we get those aspens growing and get the fills, then we produce more water. But we don't want to completely take everything down because we need those aspens to keep that heat away.
Cool. Yep.
So you're really talking about really basic forestry and getting back to managing the land better. And
Yeah.
I plan to do that over the next 4 to 5 years. So I share your concerns.
Have you found a home in Monticello yet?
Oh, Monticello, my wife said, no more 8,000 feet. We live
What?
about 8,600 feet there in Colorado, and it was blowing and windy last night when I came back over. But
Wind never blows in Monticello.
it blows a lot. So when we were looking around up here, we actually came up here and she pointed out the windmills. No way.
Uh-oh.
I think we're looking down at Castle Valley
Okay.
as a potential building site, and then
Well, welcome to a beautiful part of the country.
it is. Indeed it is. But Colorado, Rocky Mountain High.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you. Any other questions for me?
No, thank you so much.
No, I appreciate you
My wife's
introducing
an
yourself.
archaeologist. So,
Oh, all right.
Good.
Awesome.
it's one of the reasons we picked the area. There's lots of archaeology.
Absolutely.
She'll find lots of archaeology here.
So,
She studied Native American history
Yeah.
in California.
That's
She was
good.
the state archaeologist there.
okay.
So, all right.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you. We'll have the esteemed Keith Heaton from Seven County Coalition make a presentation now.
Scoot. Scoot was just letting you out.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good to be here with you. It's been a minute. This is more of a discussion than a presentation, especially for Commissioner Harvey.
Right.
Appreciate you tuning in. I wish you were here. I was looking forward to meeting you, but next time, for sure. By way of introduction, my name is Keith Heaton. I'm the director of the Seven County Infrastructure Coalition, and I just wanted to take a few minutes, especially since we have some new commissioners and new faces, to let you know what we're doing and what we're about, and what we're providing for all the contributions you make to our organization. The Seven County Infrastructure Coalition was formed about 8 years ago. Commissioner Adams was sitting on the CIB at the time, and they had the insight to think, you know what, there's a lot more we could do if we were working together across our county lines, across our Association of Government lines, because we have a lot of common interest, and of course we can accomplish more when we're lifting together and working in that manner. So the coalition was formed, and we've been hard at it ever since. I've been in my position for about 7-8 months. Our first director didn't last very long, but did a great job. And then our second director, Commissioner Mike McKee, worked for many years building up to where we are today, and retired and went on a church mission in Sacramento, California with his wife, and they're serving there now. I'm not sure how long they're going to be serving there. If it was 1 year, they'll be home in a few months already. If it's longer than that, then it may be a minute, but they're doing well. We started off with some simple planning projects, including broadband. We did some broadband planning for here in San Juan County and also Daggett County, which are the two corners of the state where we're most challenged with broadband. We also did another project in Daggett County on planning for recreation trails and those types of things. And we did a project with the Swinging Bridge, which actually sits in Colorado just across the state line, but the people in Colorado don't use it. The people in Utah have to go into Colorado to get back into Utah. If you've ever been up in that part of the country, it's a little unusual that way, but a great story. It made the news. The bridge was designed for, I think, 10,000 sheep, which isn't the same as a D9 tractor. And so the tractor tried to cross the bridge and went right through. So it was inoperable for a while, and we were pleased to get that up and running. We've done some other projects that you may have heard of. One is the Uinta Basin Railway project up in the Uinta Basin. And you folks can probably relate to this in San Juan County. The only way in or out is, a 2-lane road that goes over the mountains. And that really has limited their economic growth. And so studies have been done throughout the ages to do a railroad. And UDOT had done a study about 15, 20 years ago, and thinking, well, maybe now's the time to put rail in or do something. And it just didn't pencil out for them. But the county commissioners and the local people up there thought, well, just because it doesn't pencil out for UDOT doesn't mean it doesn't pencil out. And so we dusted that off and found, you know what, it does pencil out. So we've been working really hard on that for the past 5 years and partnering with a number of entities. And we're very grateful for everyone in the state of Utah for recognizing the vision of that project and helping us get it to where it is today. We're also, it's a public-private partnership. Our private partner is a group off the East Coast called Drexel Hamilton Infrastructure Partners. They're venture capital folks, do these types of projects. And they're working with several organizations. One is Rio Grande Pacific Railroad, who will operate the rail and help build it. And then they've contracted with multiple contractors to actually do the construction. We're also partnering with the Ute Indian tribe, and they're critical to the success of most projects in the Uinta Basin, but in particular this one. It'll go through about 10, 12 miles of their land. And they're big producers of a lot of products, including oil and gas, and so they're very anxious to see some of those transportation constraints eliminated. So we're working with them. It's been a great project. Our role as a coalition has been to secure the permitting and do all the initial planning, and so that's where we focused. We've got all the major permits secured. We're doing final geotechnical engineering while our private partners are working on getting the financing. And Commissioner Stubbs knows this, but at our meeting, was it just last week before, we passed a resolution to begin the process of authorizing $2 billion of private activity bonding through the United States Department of Transportation. As an interlocal government agency, we can access those bonds at tax-free status, which will save several percentage points. And when you're talking about $2 billion, 2 or 3%, I'm not good with math, but it's a lot of money that will save them. So this is kind of the beauty of these public-private partnerships. And once we're done with all of the geotechnical work and the financing is in place, we will sell the project over completely to our private partner, Drexel Hamilton Infrastructure, and they will take it from there. They will repay us the $28 million that we've invested, and they'll move forward with the project. We secured that $28 million from Commissioner Adams, his personal fund. If any of you are doubting, retired teachers have a pretty good pension. Actually, he's, as you know, he served on the Community Impact Board for many years, and so it was a Community Impact Board grant, which we agreed to repay when we sell the project. And so that's moving forward very nicely, and we're very pleased with it. Another thing that we're working on presently is something called the Rural Utah Energy Ecosystem. And this is something that, again, kind of started in Carbon County, and you're very well of this, that they're kind of in dire straits with the war on coal and the energy sector, the power plants, both are major. They already lost the carbon plant at Castlegate, and they're Hunter and Huntington are scheduled to close. Best case scenario for us, 10 to 15 years. It seems like the news every week coming out of Washington is sooner. So they've lost almost all of their tax base, and their schools aren't sustainable. So they're looking to do some economic development on a section called Ridge Road, which runs between Wellington over to Highway 10 near Hiawatha. It's an area where there's a number of private industries that are already committed to come in. And so we looked at that and said, well, that's great. We can do that. But let's look at the larger problems. And the larger problem is energy. Energy has always been an economic pillar of this state. Even in this area, you go back to the uranium mines in the 50s and 60s, and that was a big deal here at the time. And we have a lot of rare earth minerals and other precious resources. Utah's been very blessed, but we have a hard time getting to them. And whatever our energy future looks like, whether that's coal, whether it's windmills, solar panels, renewables with battery technology is a critical part of that. There's a lot of work going into hydrogen. Whether or not that's a boom or a bust, no one knows at this point. And of course, nuclear is a big deal. So we thought, we shouldn't just look at advanced uses of coal in Carbon County. Let's look at the entire rural Utah, especially eastern Utah, where historically we've relied on these rare earth minerals, and figure out how we can make sure Utah is in a position to move things forward. And in doing so, we thought, we can do like these industrial parks in Carbon County, or we can look at it as an ecosystem. And what's an ecosystem, you might ask? For us, it's 5 things. First of all, it's finance. The federal government is giving away billions of dollars to finance advanced energy resources. And that money's set aside. So whether you agree with the politics of all of these things like the Inflation Reduction Act or not, that money's going to go to somewhere. And I believe that Utah is very responsible with federal funding. That's always been my background. And I think we can spend it better than most. And I hope you agree. So part of it is bringing in those federal funds through grants and things. Another big part of it is networking. If you look at things like Silicon Valley or Silicon Slopes is maybe a better example of something we did here in Utah. If you're like me and you grew up and you'd go up to the Wasatch Front, you'd go through Lehigh and it was footloose, right? I mean, that was the picturesque small town place. I mean, that was rural Utah. It wasn't until you got, around the point of the mountain that you got into, we won't call it civilization, but so what happened? I mean, you can't drive through there and you don't even recognize where you're at. And that's just from the week before, right? It was the networking. We have always had a IT always, for 50 years we've had IT companies. But they never really took off until someone formed the Silicon Slopes and started working together. So that networking opportunities are a big part of our ecosystem and encouraging the entrepreneurism. That's Utah's greatest asset. It's not our rare earth minerals, our coal, or uranium, or any of those things. It's our people and their ability to do things. Another big part of it is academia. All of the universities are on board with this. BYU, Utah State, and some of the others as well. They do amazing research, very bright minds, and they come up with these great ideas and do great science. But converting that into actual business and dollars has always been a challenge. And we have some great models, like the U-Star model that we had for many years. So we know what works in this state when it comes to taking academic research and converting it into business opportunities. But we need someone to do it. So that's a big part of this. Another big part is something that we do very well in government, and that's infrastructure. So, and that's where we're looking to start, is actually increasing the infrastructure in Carbon County. They have natural gas, they have railroad, they have electricity, they have water, they have sewer. But is it adequate to support these large-scale industrial needs? And so we need to invest some more in the infrastructure and that. So that's kind of the thing in a nutshell. Talking with Commissioner Stubbs, she's very interested in some opportunities we have here in San Juan County with rare earth minerals that are a critical part of our rural ecosystem. So we're looking forward to having one of our board meetings here in beautiful San Juan County in the next several months, and finding out what it is we can do to help you succeed in your efforts. There's a number of projects that we also have in San Juan County, and I appreciate Scoot Flannery being here with me from Jones and DeMille. They're critical partners in the coalition. They're our engineer of record, and they do a lot of heavy lifting for us, and we're very grateful for them for that. But we have a number of projects here in San Juan. I mentioned that we did some broadband planning. We also have a number of projects that we're working on specifically with the Navajos. One is the access road from Old Jato to Navajo Mountain. 10-mile road cuts out 80 miles of driving for those people on Navajo Mountain who are certainly citizens of the state of Utah, as well as being members of the Ute Nation. And all of their services come from here, from Blanding and Monticello. And so individuals that provide those services, or for them to get those services, it's an all-day trip. A 10-mile access road would cut that down by more than half. And when it comes to emergency services, I mean, these things are life-saving. So this is a project that's on and off again, but we are very supportive at the coalition and happy to run point on that on behalf of the county and the state of Utah, as is your pleasure. Another project that we've been working on is doing water planning for the nation. As you are all well aware, the majority of those living on the Navajo Reservation don't have running water, and many of them don't have even reliable access to water. They have to go to takeout spots, and oftentimes the roads aren't passable. They can't even get to the water, which is unfathomable. 21st century America, right here in Utah, that people don't have water. So there's a huge federal water settlement that you're all aware of. A lot of money will be coming through. We want to make sure that Utah is prepared to get our share of that to benefit Utah citizens and citizens of San Juan County. So Scoot's kind of been our lead on that, and appreciate his good work, and we're going to move forward. We received $400,000 from the legislature through the Division of Drinking Water to actually do this study, so no small thing. But we want to make sure that we're working with everyone, and we're looking forward to having a meeting with you, commissioners, in the near future to speak specifically about that project and how we can help with it. So I could blabber on all day long, as many of you know, but I want to be respectful of your time and answer any questions or have any discussion that you'd like to have about the 7-County Infrastructure Coalition.
Well, you're in for it. You said we could ask questions. So just a couple of things I wanted to mention, Keith. Navajo Mountain is in San Juan County. For any of us to drive to Navajo Mountain, it's about 4.5 hours. I can drive from Monticello to Salt Lake in that same amount of time. But just to get the most remote portion of my county, it's that long of a drive. It's that far. And obviously Senator Romney was really the one that got the water settlement done. And the water settlement is specifically, the way I understand it, for Utah Navajos, not for the whole Navajo Nation. I think it's just to address the needs of Utah Navajos. And the Navajo Reservation in our county comprises about 25% of the county. And so we're anxious for all involved to get working on the projects to bring water to every home on the Navajo Reservation in San Juan County. So, but we really appreciate, Kent, we appreciate what Senator Romney did to get that bill passed and get the funding for that settlement. The state of Utah is going to chip in with about, I think, $5 million, $2 million, something like that. But the federal government's putting in $200 million plus, I think. in that water settlement. We appreciate the fact that Seven County is involved in our county. When we originally set up the Seven County Infrastructure Coalition, we looked at where a major portion of minerals were being produced, and they were being produced on the eastern side of the state of Utah. There's not a lot of minerals produced on the western side of the state, so we felt like there were 7 or 8 counties that really were the major producers of, and we ought to look at addressing those impacts in those counties, and that was kind of one of the reasons we formed the Seven County, and we need good leadership, and you're going to provide that good leadership. Senator Okerlund was our first director, and then Mike McKee did a good job, especially with the railroad. And now we totally expect that you're going to do a great job in San Juan County.
Absolutely. Along with Commissioner Stubbs. Breath of fresh
So,
air.
Commissioner Stubb, do you have anything you or Jamie you want to
Yes.
say to Keith?
I just want to thank you and the rest of the board for welcoming me. I'm the shortest person in the board, so I stepped by all this stuff.
I was the shortest person, so I'm thrilled to have you.
Anyway, but I used to love playing Monopoly, but it was thousands of dollars, and this is amazing when we talk about billions of dollars. And we had to vote for things like that. It's just kind of it's very exciting, especially thinking about railroads. I mentioned in the last meeting, some kids are military kids. I was a railroad kid, and I just love trains, and especially here in Utah where we had one forever and ever and ever. Anyway, but I appreciate and I'm looking forward to be part of all the amazing things that be happening. And thank
Mr.
you.
Stubbs, if you're voting on billions of dollars, don't make any mistakes.
Well, one of my question was when we were voting all this stuff, I asked, are we keeping good minutes? Because I thought we may be in trouble. I knew we had the engineers, we had the lawyers, we had the investors, and us voting. I thought, are we keeping good minutes?
Absolutely.
And I didn't realize I was sitting by the person that was recording, and they assured me that keep
Now
good
she feels
minutes.
better. It's a little.
Thank you so much for making the trip this way, and hope you get home back before the storm hits.
Well, that's my intention.
And we'll be following you.
Yeah, that's what I understand.
Yeah.
So everyone drive safely. Commissioner Harvey, it's very good to meet you. Look forward to working with you.
Jamie, you have any questions or any comments?
Yeah, first of all, Yate Keith. I just want to, hopefully my presence now makes you feel better because I heard you say, dang, I wish I met.
Yes, exactly. You don't miss a
But
beat.
yeah, it's nothing really significant about me. So I know I've got good partners here. We're working and looking forward to working together. I do want to echo the same sentiment that Commissioner Adams shared. And that is a lot of us from the reservation, we want to make sure that the water settlement funds do go to the Utah Navajos. And so I know with the commissioners on board with that same concern, we want to make sure that any projects that Navajo Nation entertains, that they're clear, that they prioritize their projects and demonstrate that they truly are going to be in San Juan County. And I can speak from past observation on previous funds. I believe UTA actually handed over some money to the nation. I forget the amount, some transportation funding. And I'm exploring that because Red Mesa still has one transient bus running off and on. Used to be in Anath. There is no nice transportation system yet. And so that's now been maybe 3-4 years since. So we don't want something like that happening with the water settlement funds,
Right.
where we're sitting here and wondering, well, those monies have been allocated 4 years ago. What happened? So, but thank you for your efforts. It's a pleasure to meet you. Look
Pleasure.
forward to working with you. I know this commission is an awesome commission, and we have our priorities aligned to accomplish many great things. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Keith. Anything else?
We work for you.
Okay.
So if there's ever anything that I can do, you know how to reach me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, Lynn's coming up. I just forgot to introduce Jens Nielsen. He's our assistant county attorney. Our county attorney's on vacation, so Jens is sitting in with us today, and he's a good San Juan boy, grew up in Blanding and knows a lot about San Juan County. We're glad to have him on board with us. Anyway, Lynn, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I've been the county's administrative law judge since 2017. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. So Commissioner Adams was here, and it was Kelly Pearson who was the first person I dealt with. So I'm a retired Marine Corps colonel. So, and you don't have to salute or anything, but I love my service in the Marine Corps. I started in 1970. I retired in 98. During most of the time in the Marine Corps, interestingly, and I was an attorney in the Marine Corps, I dealt with legislative bodies like you, local governments, state legislative bodies. I actually was assigned to work in Congress by the Secretary of Navy for a period of time. So I have a lot of experience with legislative activity, which is what you're involved in. I dealt with legislative and government affairs in Japan and Australia. So I had an amazing Marine Corps career. And you could say, how could you top that? So I retired in 98. I started working for Salt Lake City. I was with Salt Lake City for 12 years, was in the attorney's office, and ended up near the end of my career, and I actually worked with Mac. I was the city's chief administrative officer under the mayor. So I did operations and city administration for a few years. And then I became the city attorney in South Salt Lake. I did that for 8 years. And while I was in South Salt Lake is when I became your part-time administrative law judge. For the first few years or first year and a half, I dealt primarily with employee discipline appeals. Those are the first cases I handled on administrative appeal. Then my wife and I served had a church assignment in Annapolis, Maryland at the Naval Academy, which was another really fun assignment. When I came back, Mac asked me to re-engage as your administrative law judge. Since that time, I've handled about 6 land use appeal cases from the Planning Commission zoning administrator's decision. I currently have a denial of business licensing that I'm handling. So that's kind of the scope that I've been involved with your county. Commissioner Adams and Mac asked me to give, especially the 2 new commissioners, a little training like Administrative Law 101. So I prepared a 1-pager. I've tried to make it straightforward. So Mac, if you can hand this out to everybody. Thanks, Mac. Thanks. So a footnote on what I'm going to present you. In 2021, then Kendall Laws, the county attorney, and I cross-talked about having a very, very strong ordinance that dealt with administrative appeals, and Commissioner Adams, I believe, was involved in that. So it was drafted by Kendall Laws. I made liberal comments on it, and I think Mac was involved in it too. That was implemented in November of 2021. That ordinance, interestingly, has been one of the more comprehensive administrative appeal ordinances in the entire state at the local government level. I was involved in drafting a similar thing for South Salt Lake, and there's other cities that have very strong administrative appeal ordinances, but San Juan County has the gold standard. Now, there's some tweaking we're going to do. Mac and I are going to bring you back kind of a revision of that, but the reality is I've actually been making presentations in the statewide on administrative appeal processes based on my experience here and your ordinance. So you should be very proud of the fact that you have a strong ordinance in place. So why do you need an ordinance? So I'm going to go over this very, very quickly with you. As a local government, as a county, you impact lives and property. So your citizens and private property owners are regulated by you. And so they look to you for good laws, but they also look to you for due process. If something's going haywire, they want to be able to speak up and engage the county to make sure they're heard and that all the facts and the law are appropriately applied as it relates to themselves, their associational responsibilities, and their private and their businesses, all of which you regulate. If you look at your county code, it targets individuals, associations, property, and business. And in the state of Utah, private property is paramount. If you looked at the 50 states in the United States, no state has stronger private property laws than the state of Utah. So it all begins with the property owner's rights. And so you, as a local government, when you're passing ordinances, are affecting those rights and limiting them to some degree, or perhaps protecting those rights, depending on what you do. So all of this administrative appeal process is about making sure those rights are both protected and shored up. So my next line here is what kind of decisions end up with me. Okay, business licensing and permits, including alcohol licenses, health and safety code violations, contracts with the local government. If somebody were to contract with you and there's a bid protest, that comes to the administrative law judge. Animal control. I'm the administrative law judge for the city of St. George. My last two cases have been a dog impoundment and a dog euthanasia case that came to me on appeal. So those kind of cases would come to me. Fees for government services. If somebody contests a fee or a tax, that's appealable to the administrative law judge. Building codes, fire code violations. In South Salt Lake, I dealt with the fire marshal regularly. I'm very, very comfortable in dealing with the fire code. Probably less comfortable on the building code because I'm not an engineer and I don't think like one, but I can roll up my sleeves and deal with that. All the land use decisions, and then county employee suspensions, demotions, and terminations. Now, your code provides for a grievance, which is not a suspension, demotion, or termination to the appeal authority. I'm going to work with MAC to change that. I think MAC should be able to hear employee grievances. They shouldn't be coming to me, MAC. That's not my purview. You're the administrator, and you should be able to deal with those things. Okay. Why an effective appeal process? It's really two things. Number one, the safeguards of your citizens, the people you represent, safeguarding their rights and responsibilities. The second thing is on the county side. Some actions end up in court. You want to make sure your administrative appeal person gathers all the facts, all the information, and ties it together in a package. So if it goes up on appeal, you've completed both your factual development and your legal analysis. And interestingly, if I decide a case and I do what I'm supposed to do on appeal, only what I put together goes to the court. They can't retry the case. I am, for all intents and purposes, the trial judge at this level under your responsibility. Now, I'm independent. That doesn't mean I come to every single case and salute the county and uphold every single decision. My responsibility is mature the facts, make sure I understand, and make the correct decision on behalf of the county. Now, sometimes it's for, sometimes it's against. I pride myself in the decisions I've made for you is sometimes it was interesting. It was an area BFE. I don't really remember the case. It was a off-road vehicle. It was a piece of property in the county, and change of ownership. The new owners wanted to expand the use of the property. By expanding the use, the vehicles ran off the property, and the neighbors were very frustrated with that. And they came to me and they said, well, we have a legal non-conforming use. In other words, we're grandfathered. And I said, well, you're grandfathered, but you're running off your property, so that violates your non-conforming use. I chose to vacate and redecide the case. I said, okay, you can have your non-conforming use so long as you don't operate off your property. The day you operate off your property, your non-conforming use is gone. So I try to do the right thing for the right reasons. Sometimes what I get needs to be cleaned up. Sometimes it needs to be remanded and given back for reconsideration. I'm somewhat hesitant of replacing the decision maker's decision. In other words, I can do a lot, but sometimes I'll refer it back to the planning commission or the zoning administrator with some direction and with some guidance to do it. Many administrative appeal authorities don't like doing that. They just says it's up or down. No, I think there's a middle ground, and I like to use that as your administrative law judge, just to refer it back to if I need to. Since I'm talking about you, let me make sure, and Jens will clarify this. Sometimes you act in an administrative capacity, and sometimes you act in a legislative capacity. So Lisa and I dealt with this. They brought an appeal that was legislative. They had requested a zoning change from you, and Kendall Laws and I looked at it and we said, no, that's legislative. That doesn't fall within my purview. So I declined to take that case because it was legislative. If you had acted on the Sitla property based on an administrative responsibility, then I could have taken that up on appeal. So I'm not replacing you as this legislative body. I'm taking what your legislative acts are and applying them to the facts that I've got in front of me. So is that, especially you two, is that clear? So I'm not the county commission, and I will never act like the county commission. I will take it, whatever code you give me, and apply it and deal with it appropriately. Okay, so the bottom of this page is best practices. Some of this is in the code, some of it's not. The first thing is called a de novo review. When a matter comes to me, I will assume that the county acted in good faith and made the best decision possible. But I'm not bound by it. I will go back over the facts. And you've heard about 2-dimension and 3-dimension. Sometimes the matters that come to me are 2-dimensional. They don't consider all the facts. So I ramp up the fact assessment, make sure I've got all the context and all the facts. Once I have all the facts, I feel more comfortable in making the decision. So the de novo process is revisiting the facts and to make sure the facts are in play. The second thing has to do with the legal framework. So a county person, let's say your zoning administrator, will be looking at the county zoning code, okay, and make what he or she believes is a correct decision based on the zoning code. But what that zoning administrator may not be aware of, there may be some state statutes that come into place. There may be some legislative intent that comes into play. There may be a lot of things that come into play outside the county code. It's my responsibility to mature the legal framework to make sure the decision that's made is made in the broader legal framework rather than a narrow legal framework. So those are paramount, and I have to get at those right away. I don't wait. I start maturing those right away. The third thing is to anticipate legal issues. There's actually a code section in Utah Code which lists 12 different reasons why somebody can appeal an administrative decision to the state court. That's my checklist. I go down each one of those to make sure that embedded in this particular case, I don't have one of those stealth issues that I haven't addressed. So I want to make sure that, and it could be an ethics issue. Let's say a person decides has a conflict of interest and it doesn't come out, and I have to find out about whether there's a conflict. If there's a conflict of interest, then we have to revisit how the decision was made and approach it a different way. There's a long list of those things. I also like to, and interestingly, this is done at the federal level, but not so much at the state and local government level. At the federal level, administrative appeal authorities are required to try to mediate an issue short of litigation. I really try hard to narrow the issues and work with all the parties, the county and the petitioner, to find a solution that satisfies both owners, so and they can sign off on it. If they sign off on it, then litigation goes away. If not, I try to have as strong a package as I can. One of the drawbacks in our current ordinance and many of the ordinances statewide is it talks about the right to a hearing. So a hearing is important, but a hearing should not happen until some preliminary discovery, factual development, and legal framework development happens. So I spend my time in pre-hearing conferences with the parties to mature all that, and then at the end of that, we make a decision whether an evidentiary hearing is still required. I haven't been down here for a year and a half or 2 years because we haven't had to have any evidentiary hearings. I've been able to solve or resolve the cases short of a hearing because I've done my due diligence at the front end. So anyway, that's 101 administrative appeals. I do have a second document that I'm just going to give to you for information. I've been working with, and I think Commissioner Adams knows this, I've been working with Johnny Miller at the state level. Johnny Miller's individual who reaches out with the county attorneys to address these kinds of issues. He has asked me to work with him to educate especially the rural counties throughout Utah. So in November 2022, I prepared this for Johnny. Johnny has subsequently sent it out to all the county attorney. This is kind of an expanded version of this, and I'm not going to go through it with you, but I invite you to read through it and kind of get a sense as to what we're trying to educate the other counties on. Again, I want to get personal now. I want to thank you for the opportunity to work with your amazing professionals. I had great respect for Kelly and for Mac. Mac and I have known one another for a long time. This is a really neat place. And my hat's off to you for all the good stuff you're doing and all the hard problems you're tackling. But I want to thank you for what you're doing. So anyway, that's what I got.
Thanks, Lynn. We really appreciate you finishing your mission and coming back to us.
So true.
You'll never know how much we appreciate
Well, there
it.
was. He knows there was
We missed you then,
kind of a
Matt.
misstep while I was gone.
Yeah, and Sylvia or Jamie, you have any comments or
No, just
Jens?
thank you for all this information. The more we learn, the easier the job is when we're sitting here and the papers are coming, we can make
Sure.
better judgment. And
It's
thank you.
just so you know, it's an in-house process.
Yeah,
You control the administrative appeal process.
yeah.
So we work very hard within the county to solve the problem. So if and when it goes to a district court, we've wrapped it together. There are attorneys in the state, and he knows one of them, who doesn't believe in this. He thinks, I'd much rather be into court the first day, forget about the administrative appeal process. Well, I think I don't support that, but you can immediately jump into court and have the court do all of this for you. But the cost is amazing.
Yeah, we
You
need
have a
the money.
case, it was called the Northern Alliance or something like that.
Northern Monticello Alliance.
Northern Monticello. Northern Monticello was before you in the planning convention for about 3 years. Eventually, in 2015, they went into district court. It ended up all the way to the Utah Supreme Court, and then came back in February of 2022. So between 2015 and February of 2022, your county was paying amazing legal fees. I mean, the amount of. And what was wrong with that case? It didn't go to an administrative hearing officer. It went to the commission. Great people, but they didn't have the skill or know how to deal with it. If it had come to an experienced administrative law judge, you probably wouldn't have had that case 7 years in front of the Utah appellate cases. Now, I'm not guaranteeing you that you'll never go to court if I'm around. That's not what I'm guaranteeing. But I think you increase your ability to solve a legal issue or limit its impact on you if you use the administrative judge process
So is that
appropriately.
case resolved then, Lynn?
Yeah,
It's done.
I think so. I mean, February of 2022, the decision was made. So
We need to all.
I haven't heard anything more about it
We
since
need
then.
to all go out and have a Coke.
Yeah, I've taken enough time. But anyway, thank you very much.
And thank you
Let's
for your
see,
service
Jamie,
for-
did you have anything you wanted to say?
I just wanted to ask a little more. The idea about the county employee suspension, demotions, termination, having been in the past, you were mentioning, it might be best to kind of return that responsibility.
So it's still in play. If there was a disciplinary action that was taken and the employee, not the county, if the employee wanted to appeal it, it would come to me. And for 20 years, I practiced employment law. I'm very, very comfortable in dealing with employment law matters. The state statute actually requires that you have to have a land use appeal authority and an employee appeal authority. Those are the only two you're required to have. Your ordinance is broader than that, but you're required and mandated by state statute to have those two.
Okay.
Does that answer your question, or did I miss the question?
Now, gents, do you have any
I have
questions?
just a comment. So I see a real value in what you do in this system. One thing you do is you give the county a good option, a professional that can hear the matter that needs to be heard. And I think it also gives confidence to the community and those that are on the other side of it. The record that is made in that is really valuable because, as you said, when you go straight to court, where do you spend all your time and money? It's the darn discovery and the record that you make is very thorough. I mean, it's just like a packet that can be handed over and then off you go. So it does reduce cost, but it also is so thorough that it kind of discourages, it limits the litigation. It kind of helps decide the case more quickly because all that work has been done. But the confidence to the public in general, hopefully they can see a real value in that they have a neutral professional that's trained to do this. As you said earlier, the commission, very capable, good decision maker people, but the community largely views the commissioners as being biased toward the county, I would think, and that would be a natural way to look at it. But having the administrative law judge, I think, is a real value. So anyway,
Let me accent. I don't want to go on forever. At what he just said about the administrative record at the end of every case, and Mac has seen these. I put together every single solitary document that I had in front of me, and I create an inventory and I certify it as the administrative record for that matter. And like he said, if and when they go to court, that record is all that the state court is going to be able to look at. And so that record is gold. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thanks, Lynn. We appreciate you coming and helping us understand a little bit about your job. Let's see, next is Jake here?
No, Jake couldn't make it today. He'll make it another time.
Okay.
He had some interviews.
So, Elise,
moving forward.
Good morning, Commissioners.
morning.
My name is Elise Erler, and I'm with an independent state agency, School and Institutional Trust Plans Administration. If you're okay, I will abbreviate that to SITLA. It's a bit of a mouthful, but it needs to get on the record in that regard. What I would like to do today, with your permission, is to present to you some background information and kind of run you through a document that will be before you in your legislative formal session. So we won't get into what you're going to make your decision on in terms of how to make your decision, but I wanted to give you background on all of that. And in the course of doing that, this is going to be a shared presentation. I will give you some information, and then the land use planner, landmark design, and you can see right now, I'm assuming it's on your screens as well, Mark Vlasic, who is the land use planner that's helped SITLA on this particular project. So maybe I'll just do a quick audio check. Can we hear you, Mark?
Can you hear me?
You bet.
Perfect.
One question. I would like to share the screen, and I need to ask for permission to do that.
Technology getting in the way.
Okay, see if you can now.
Perfect. Thank you.
We're just seeing you if there's... Oh, there we go.
Okay, there we go.
Perfect. Can you make it large? Thank you. Great. So the document that you will look at in your formal session is the community structure plan. It's kind of a long way of saying a master plan for a large area. And just to set the table for you in that regard, if we can move to the next one, please. Just to remind you or make sure everybody's on the same page in terms of where are we. We are looking at the southern end of the Spanish Valley, north end of San Juan County, and the clear gray color that you see are the private lands, privately owned lands. The blue are the SITLA properties, and the green are federal. We haven't differentiated out the federal ownership in that particular slide. But the community structure plan, so the master plan, is shown in the dashed blue outline. What's shown in the red dashed line on the federal lands are lands in two different exchanges that are proposed to go from the federal government, the BLM, to SITLA. And I think you, as a commissioner, are familiar with some of that, those exchange opportunities. Also to orient you a little bit, sorry, can we just go back quickly? Yeah. On the left-hand side, the dark black line that you see running down the left-hand side is US 191. And then the other dark line that you see is Spanish Valley Drive, which turns into the LaSalle Loop, running northwest down to southeast, just to help orient where you are. The blue...
I think they're identifying that as the LaSalle Loop Road, Elise.
Yeah,
it runs all the way down through.
Yeah, it's the same road. It changes name somewhere. It depends on what map you're looking at as to how its name has changed. But just to orient you, that's where we're looking. So one of the challenges in the Spanish Valley portion of San Juan County is that physically it's part of a longer valley that runs into Grand County, and so there are a number of opportunities to share with Grand County on problems that arise, and also to share with Moab, in particular on utilities, storm drainage, things like that. So some of those issues will, as we get further along in the whole process, will come to you for your approval. And then moving on, Mark, please, to the next slide. I want to give you a quick timeline view so that you know that this is not something that has just happened. Starting in 2014 up to today, there's been a lot of work that has been done, much of it land planning, much of it engineering, and it's been collaborative between the county and SITLA and other partners periodically also participating. So we will start with 2014 and the Water and Sewer Master Plan, which was prepared by Jones and DeMille. I'm not really wildly familiar with this particular document, but I think it was the document that helped the county decide that, yes, there is a good opportunity to put in water and sewer system in the Spanish Valley in the San Juan County portion of that. So that was back almost a decade ago. when that was approved by the county. And I know there was some cost sharing in that with that Sitla was. I've seen an invoice, so I don't know the details around the cost sharing, but we did share on that. Then we jumped to 2017 and the San Juan Spanish Valley Special Service District, which is a very long acronym there. We call it the SSD, approved the Culinary Water and Sanitary Sewer Project. This project required a fair amount of funding, obviously, to get it going. 60% of the funding came from grants and loans at the state and federal level. 20% Sitla contributed, or is in the process of contributing, and 20% from the users. And I believe the county backstopped some of the county users until they're able to pay as they make their monthly payments. Sitla's contribution, just to be clear, we are to some extent backstopping the loan repayments that the county is making. We are paying $110,000 a year to the SSD for 20 years. So $2.2 million, and in return, we do get some hookups in a very generic sense. There's a big fat document that goes behind all of this as an agreement. But anyway, so when the county came to Sitla and asked us to participate in this project, which is a perfectly valid project because it will benefit our property as well as the existing private landowners and future development that's happening there, we realized that, okay, if you're going to put in utilities, maybe you need a land use plan to start with. So we worked with the county on what we call an area plan. And if we can move to the next slide, please. The area plan is a high-level land use looking at the private lands and the Sitla lands in Spanish Valley, so none of the federal lands, and looking at, well, how over the long term, being 20, 50 years, whatever it is, how do these lands want to be used? And that land use plan, we partnered with the county again on that, and that was put together by a Landmark Design, and I'll turn things over to Mark in just a minute, but I wanted to let you know that the cost sharing there was based on acreage. So because Sitla, as you'll remember on that map, had a huge amount of blue land and not so much private land, the county picked up, the portion that was relevant to the county itself, the private property owners. So with that, I will hand the baton over to Mark Vlasic, Landmark Design, who put together the area plan and subsequently has helped Sitla with our own planning activities. So Mark, if I can turn things over to you.
Yes, thank you, Elise. And again, thank you for letting me speak here today, commissioners. So the plan, as Elise mentioned, Landmark Design started working on it in 2016, and it took about a year and a half to develop this plan. We involved quite a process of engaging with the public and doing a lot of technical analysis. And sort of the big picture item here is this plan document that you see here, this drawing. And it basically, what we're trying to do here is create a new community that's well organized and that also sort of responds to the opportunities that are available on the site. And the key area, things that you want to look at here are the little squares on the right-hand side at the bottom. They're basically the 5 types of land that are here. As Elise mentioned, we have private land to the north, and that is either developed or under development or being held vacant at the moment with the likely intention that they will be developed. So there's about 700 acres of private land. The area that's shown in orange, and it straddles both sides of the Spanish Valley Drive or LaSalle Loop Road, there's about 1,450 acres, and this is the sort of the core of the community. It's where There's the flattest land, so it's got more development, easy to develop potential. It straddles, again, the LaSalle Loop Road, which makes it a very important as far as having your sort of key facilities along that road as well. We also have in the yellow, so more to the extremities, to the north and to the east, we have what we're calling perimeter neighborhoods. And this is land that has development potential, but it also has a lot of challenging topography. As you probably know, when you've been through this area, it's a very striking area, but it also has, very steep slopes on the edges. So the idea here is this would be a different type of development than the orange. It would be something that it would be maybe more single family, or development could be clustered in certain areas and leave some of the more challenging land undeveloped. We then have two other areas that really are in relation more to the Highway 191, which is the highway commercial areas, which are indicated in red. These are properties that are owned by Sitla, and there are some that are in private development, but what we're illustrating here is Sitla lands, about 200 acres, that would be highway commercial type uses. And then we have flex development areas, which are really have some commercial opportunities, business development, those sorts of uses. It could also have some residential type uses. So it's got the ability to change depending on proposals and what the market might demand. Other things that are shown on this map are, we identified two neighborhood centers. So the idea here is sort of different than, say, Moab, is that the Spanish Valley the Spanish Valley Drive serves as the main street for the community rather than US 191. And so that along that drive at these crossings of these other roads that are where there's major crossings would be where we would have local services such as shopping, offices, those sorts of things. We've also indicated preliminary sites for schools in the area, a high school, middle school or junior high school, and a elementary school at this stage, in addition to major parks that are shown both as a regional park, which would be a large type of park, and community parks, which would be something smaller in the range of 10 acres. This doesn't mean these are the only open spaces. Obviously, there's going to be a lot of open space in this community because of the lay of the land, but there will be some smaller parks eventually as well. And then we just, at this stage, indicated where we know that there's wells that need to be protected, and we're just trying to capture the general layout of how this community is going to develop. The plan is, as you saw, was adopted again in 2018 by the commission at that time, and it is adopted as an addendum to your general plan for the county. After the area plan was adopted, we were retained again to help create specific development ordinances for the Spanish Valley. And as you can see here, there's 10 chapters of ordinances. The one that applies to this application is the one that's highlighted and on the right-hand side, the number 2, Spanish Valley Planned Community District. And that basically describes the process for getting a project like this approved. This is a summary of the approval process under that part of the code.
Mark, I'm just going to quickly interject here on the code, the ordinances that you see. Sitla was not party to any of that. That was the county 100%. Right. Just make that clear.
Right. Thank you, Elise. That's a good point. So, but as you see here, there's a 5-step process. The first is that you make an application for whatever land that you want to move forward with. In this case, it was the area that Elise showed that's in the blue hatched mark for the part of their land. And you then basically prepare a rezone for that area. That rezone would then, once it's approved, will change the zoning and attach a concept plan and other details of the project to it, so that it becomes sort of a separate zoning piece for the county to manage. And so that application was made. We provided the higher level of detail at that time, and it was eventually approved in December of 2021. So basically, going back to, you can see it actually, I'm moving the wrong way here. Those blue lands that are, the areas right here that are shown with the blue dashed lines, that's our application area. And that area has now all become a new zone that, again, attaches the new details of the project to it. The following step is then to create this community structure plan. We developed a preliminary community structure plan as part of the zoning application that was approved, and then we revised it and detailed it and resubmitted it, and that's what this application before you today is. Just some highlights from the plan, and you can see that the general structure of the plan is very similar to what we developed in the area plan, but it's starting to detail it much more. We see the general road system for the area. You can see that that core area that we talked about, the central development area, is more like a town. It has a sort of a gridded road system. Those neighborhood centers, the areas that are pink at this intersection area here and this area here, those have been detailed of what the specific areas of those, where they're located. And then, we connect all the roads up through these other areas to connect back into the private lands. And we've identified some of the physical constraints in these areas, so we know where there's likely to be development as we move forward. We've also identified and revised the location of some of the parks and schools as we start looking closer at it. And as part of this, we're looking at how water is going to flow through the area, through Pack Creek and through some of the drainages from the east to the west into Pack Creek. This is just a summary of what the 4 basic areas might look like. The central development area would have a little bit higher density of 2 to 3 story buildings, typically townhomes and some of those types of uses. It would include some basic services, but the bulk of the commercial and office type of services would be located in the neighborhood centers. In contrast, the perimeter area shown in the second image could be larger lot developments. It could be, as I mentioned, sort of cluster developments where there's better land, and then retaining some of the steeper and more challenging land as permanent open space in the area. The neighborhood centers is really, again, this idea about creating this main street so that people have a place to do their daily shopping, to meet, to be government offices and daycare centers, those sorts of things would be located typically in those neighborhood centers. And then the flex development areas, it would accommodate sort of a wide range of uses that, again, are taking advantage of the close proximity to US 191. This chart here breaks down the total area by the use. So you can see there's just under 1,900 acres in this application. Of that, about 1/3 of it is central development areas, 1/3 is perimeter development areas, and roughly 1/3 is flex development areas, with the neighborhood area centers being just under 10%, 6.1%. Part of this is also showing our projection of the number of units, residential units, so a total of 3,000 residential units, 3,134, and commercial square feet upwards of about 1.9 million square feet. So this is some significant development. This drawing here then shows the road circulation system. We retained a traffic and transportation engineer to help us understand what those numbers, the number of units and the number of square feet, what it might mean in the long run of the need for roads in the area. And we classified the roads then by their function. And as you can see, that the bulk of Spanish Valley Drive here is this urban residential collector. So it links on to the north in Spanish Valley towards Grand County, and it continues out towards the south end where the classification, the size of the road gets a little bit smaller. You have these 3 east-west connectors, Old Airport Road, Kens Lake Cutoff Road to the south, and in between, we call it No Name Road for now, but it's the one in the middle that sort of is bringing people into the center of the community of this particular application. And then we have local roads, which are shown in yellow here. So there's smaller scale roads. We then have looked at, in addition, the parks and trails system. We have a very thorough and connected trail system, both on street for biking and for off street, which would be multi-purpose trails that people can either bike or hike or walk on. We've developed street sections for all of these, so all of the roads will eventually have sidewalks. Some will have curb and gutters, other will have open swells and to accommodate storm drainage and that sort of thing. This is an image of what one of the typical intersections in that downtown portion might look like. So the main road going through the drawing here would be Spanish Valley Drive, and this would be a connecting, I'm sorry, let me go back. And the other road would be one of the connecting local roads. This then shows that we also have thought about how to get storm water through the area. So along Main Street, every other road becomes instead a green space where we can convey storm water through the community. We don't have to necessarily pipe it, and we're working with stormwater specialists to develop that system at the present time. And then the application ends with these architectural design guidelines that really provide very specific details of how the area can and should develop. It would work in conjunction with the zoning ordinance, and as you're probably aware that there's the current zoning in the county is being revised. This because the timing of this application, the existing zoning will apply to this application in conjunction with these design guidelines.
And Mark, I will add on the design guidelines, which is certainly more than half of the document that you have in front of you for your bedtime reading, it also includes highway commercial. You'll note it's not one of the zones in the community structure plan, but the highway commercial that is on Sitla property is the design guidelines address those parcels of land as well. And that's because the highway commercial is already zoned as highway commercial. So the architectural guidelines, I think at some point are going to be in everyone's back pocket for a long time. Anyway, sorry, Mark, move on.
Yeah, we're just about done here. From my side here, I just wanted to sort of go over where we are in the process one more time. So that the PC zone plan, the rezone has taken place, it's been approved. We've submitted the community structure plan in August of last year. It's now being presented to you today for your consideration. And so the request with this application is that it be adopted pending the adoption of an agreeable development agreement, so that you can see that the two areas, the community structure plan, the row here, and the development agreement are highlighted because they go hand in hand. And so that the idea is that this will get approval pending that a development agreement can be struck. And so that's the end of my presentation. I'm here for answering any questions, and thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Mark. And I will just add, we're not bringing the development agreement to you in concurrence with the community structure plan. Partly, it's a lot of work to get all those packages together at the same time, which we can handle. But the community structure plan will inform what happens, what's discussed in the development agreement. So to the extent that we can get almost 100% certainty, because we're suggesting in your formal session that approval of the community structure plan, this master plan, be subject to an acceptable development agreement that would come before you. My guess is ballparkish 6 months later this year. I don't know, because we'll have to work closely, obviously, with the county on that to sort things out. But so two documents that would be hand in hand, but we're doing them one at a time in single file. So that condition, I think, needs to be on the record when you do your decision making. In the meantime, informationally, I'm happy to answer questions. Mark's happy to answer questions if you have any. There's a lot that we've thrown at you. You have great bedtime reading, and of course, always available to answer questions at other times as well.
In 2017, I believe it was, did we adopt a draft of the area zoning plan? What was it we adopted? And it was only a draft when we adopted it. So I'm not sure where we even sit on this whole process.
So for the ordinances for the Spanish Valley, the Planning Commission recommended for approval ordinances that, and this was right at the time that the County Commission was changing. So Planning Commission recommended approval. The County Commission changed before before that particular set of ordinances went before you. There were a series of discussions, I guess is probably the best way to say, with the new county, the then new County Commission, and there were changes made. So it really took, and there was, as you may remember, there was a highway commercial moratorium that was put on, the County Commission put on for 6 months. So in the course of all of that, the ordinances before the County Commission were modified from what you might have seen a year before. But the County Commission did approve the modified ordinances in late 2019, I believe. Right.
Amended. Yeah, we amended those.
I actually am an expert in that because I had to deal with one of my cases.
Well,
2 seconds, I can tell you.
Yeah, so the ordinances that are in place right now, when you look at them on the county website, they say draft. They were approved in November 2019. And it was that version that says draft that's on the county website is what was approved. Now the zoning map changed, and that change continued to happen later on.
As well as the amendments.
Yeah, so if that...
Lynn probably has some insight.
Lynn is...
So I was confused. I had a case that involved the zone, the Spanish Valley Code that was adopted in 2018. And what happened for almost a year and a half between the Planning Commission and the Commission was back and forth as to what that would look like. When it was finally presented to the Commission, it did say draft. And during that commission meeting, specific provisions were accepted, certain ones were not accepted, but they approved it. The commission adopted it. Unfortunately, it was never, the word draft was never taken off.
That was a
the
2-to-1
document.
vote, by the way.
Yeah.
Yes. Anyway, but
2-1.
it's in force
Yes.
and it applies.
Yeah.
But
Incomplete.
unfortunately, your website says draft on it.
Yeah,
So
it does.
So where do we stand, Lynn? We have that ordinance.
you have that ordinance.
Even though it says draft, it's still the ordinance we
Now, the
adopted.
ordinance, interestingly, addresses zoning districts, but doesn't address the rest of the zoning code. So as it relates to nonconforming use, the role of the planning commission, everything else, you have to go back to the 2011 zoning code because that's still in play, except for the zoning districts that were created in the 2018 code.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. There were final versions to that ordinance that weren't passed. Instead, they voted to adopt the draft, which left a lot of incomplete items in that and incomplete processes.
So what are we doing? What we're doing today is that filling in the gaps of
It's kind of still following that process that's in there, but and stay tuned. You'll see new ordinances being presented, and we've gone through the planning commission. We've had public hearings. We'll continue to do that. We've got to produce the map, so we're fixing those those incomplete issues. However, SITLA still comes in under that draft ordinance, as we call it, and modifications that have taken place since then. But the process in this portion is fairly simple. That's kind of what we're following, and that's what Mark had laid out in that table form of that process that we're going through.
we're dealing with the structural plan.
Correct.
today.
Yep. Yes, and it's all within those steps.
Okay.
And so the steps are there. That's pretty easy to follow. It's
Okay.
the ordinances themselves when it gets into the finer
Do you
details
have
that
any
makes it
questions,
difficult.
Either one of you?
Looks nice.
Gents, you have any comments?
I'm almost too new to even know what to ask.
I know.
I've seen Kendall nod his head.
I watch everybody see which way they're looking. You smile
Okay.
if you like it.
So,
It's an amazing structural plan. I mean, it's well thought. I like communities that are planned, like in Page, Arizona. It was all created and planned that way because then you think all the necessary steps it takes to build in a city.
Well, and separating land uses
Yeah.
helps, I think, for everybody who drives through
Yeah.
Moab. You
And I
realize
like
that your highway as
cars
your
and
main
the-
street there's just too many conflicts there, and it doesn't serve any of those uses very well. I will let everyone know that actually developing this plan will take a long time, largely because there's not the market to absorb kind of that full plan all at once. It's going to take 20 years to build out, and then we have additional lands, obviously, that are wanting to become developed over the next 100 years, whatever the timing is out of all of this.
Jamie, do you have a comment or question?
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm just curious. You both struck my curiosity in regards to past ordinances and drafts. I don't see any ordinance on their plat that they're presenting, so I imagine that's all local government kind of issues, right? Because Sitla is presenting here the use of the land, and they've kind of outlined 5 separate areas. And so really what we're doing is we're adopting those plans and moving forward. Nothing to do with local ordinances at this time. Okay. All right. I think I caught you.
Yeah, and the land uses
Uses themselves
are very conceptual, if you will, not nailing down the details of exactly the street's going to be here and it's going to be, I mean, we have cross sections for widths, but what's going to be on the side of the street. That all remains flexible because all of us need to respond to what the market wants at the time in a very general sense. So thank you all for your time.
Okay, thanks.
Oh, okay.
What is Sitla's obligation to follow county ordinances?
That's a very good question.
To the county, or can Sitla do what it wants? If it wants?
I think the best way to think about this is most of the land that you saw in the plan will be privatized. And so
Sold from Sitla to
private
individuals.
private individuals, private companies, whatever it happens to be. So we believe that it's best to go through the county's process because at the end of the day, you don't want a whole chunk of land that's grandfathered in. And we need to fit in with the overall system of utilities and county, city, whatever ends up happening there.
Sitla does not envision being the owner of property that has improvements on it long term. It would sell property to private individuals, and they would just go through the local process.
Yes. And by privatizing, that's adding land to the tax rolls for the county.
Okay,
Thank you. Thank you all.
appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right.
That
That was all that was on our agenda today.
We've got a break before
So
commission
we'll
meeting.
take a 10-minute break before we start our commission meeting.
Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, guys.